and welcome back to Nomad Programming. In today's video, we continue the final group in HTML, text elements, which are text typography elements, and some miscellaneous elements as well. Feel free to add your questions or perhaps a suggestion in the comment section below. Alright, let's begin. Text typography elements in HTML are used to control the visual presentation and style of text directly within the document. These elements define how text is rendered in terms of appearance, such as size, weight, alignment, and decorations. They focus on how the text looks rather than its meaning or semantic role. Now, here are some reasons why you need to use text typography elements. First, we have visually distinguished text. It highlights important content to guide the user's attention. Also, it creates emphasis, differentiate sections, or display technical terms elegantly. Next, we have enhanced hierarchy. It establishes clear visual distinctions in headings, subheadings, and inline text elements. Support branding. Ensure textual styles align with branding guidelines for logos, taglines, or marketing content. Improve user experience. Deliver an engaging and initiative interface by applying typography principles. Why use these tags when CSS can style text similarly? CSS can style text to look like these tags, but there are specific reasons for using these elements. First, we have ease of use. These elements provide a simple, quick way to apply common styles directly in HTML without needing external CSS. Here is an example where the phrase bold text is set in bold. The first line of code here is a span element containing the phrase bold text and contains the attribute style, which is an embedded CSS. Don't worry, I will explain about CSS soon. All what you need to know right now is in this example, the contained phrase is set to be bold by adding style font weight bold, which is a CSS line that makes text bold. On the other hand, in this example, the phrase is set to bold just by containing the text within the element bold. As you can see, it's much simpler and you don't need to add other elements or attributes. Just add the bold element, then the text that you want to make it bold. Default browser support. Browsers by default recognize these elements and their style. The bold element and the italic elements have consistent browser defaults for rendering text in bold or italics, ensuring predictable styling even when CSS is not available. Fallback for styling. If CSS fails to load for a bundle of reasons that I will explain when we get to CSS soon, these elements still ensure the intended visual effect, providing basic accessibility and readability. CSS cannot fully replace semantic context. CSS can replicate the appearance of superscript and subscript, for example, but it cannot convey their semantic meaning to assistive technologies like screen readers. It is used for styling purposes, but not for semantic reasons, which we have seen almost all of HTML semantics elements. We have this example over here, which is the mass energy equivalence formula. E represents energy, which is the total energy of an object. M represents the mass, refers to the object mass, and C is the speed of light, and we have C squared. The formula explains the relationship between mass and energy. Now, as you know, the C is squared, so the number 2 should be slightly up above the letter C. So here is the CSS representation of the formula. The style is added to the span element with the style's vertical aligned super, which will make the number 2 above the letter C, and font size smaller, which will make the size of the number 2 smaller. On the other hand, the same formula added within a paragraph element and just added the superscript element for the letter 2. You see how much simpler this looks? Now we only use the element superscript for it and the output will be the same but with less code. When should you use typography elements over CSS? In HTML, elements like the bold and the italic, the superscript and subscript elements, when you need a quick, consistent presentation, when semantic context like the superscript and the subscript is necessary, use CSS for more customized styles, or when separating content structure HTML from presentation, CSS is required to control styles globally across multiple elements. Okay, by now you understand how is this group different from previous ones and that it is better to add these elements when needed rather than adding styles for text. So now we will begin with first typography element, which is the bold element. The bold text element makes text appear bold but does not indicate any added significance. It enhances visual importance or readability in design. It is best used for non-critical emphasis or keywords or stylistic headings. Now on VS Code over here, I'm going to add a new section and a title for that section, and I'm going to add bold element, and then we're going to add a paragraph element and type in between. Here is now I'm adding the bold element. As you can see, the bold element have an opening and a closing tag. In between I will add bold and afterwards I will add the word. Okay, as you can see how the word bold looks like. Now using the bold element to emphasize important text is not the correct use because we already have covered another element which represents emphasis or importance, which is the strong element. Overusing the bold text element makes the content harder to read. Reserve the bold element for non-semantic uses like formatting purposes and use CSS for purely decorative styling. Next element we have over here, which is the italic element. It renders text in italic, often used for technical terms or foreign words. It differentiates content without implying emphasis or importance, and it is best used for titles of works, scientific names, or soft emphasis. I'm going to add a new section, and a title for this section will be the italic element, and I'm going to add a paragraph and type this is an. Then I will add the italic element. As you can see, it has an opening and a closing tag. Italic word. So as you can see how the word italic looks like. Now using italic for emphasis is not correct. I have explained previously that we can use the emphasis element to emphasize words and phrases. The italic element is just a visual representation for technical terms, foreign words, titles of works, scientific names, and so on. Overloading the page with italic text may reduce readability, so use it only if it's necessary. Use the italic element only when styling matches its semantic intent. Underline text element. It adds a single underline to text, commonly used to indicate misspelled or specially marked words. It adds visual distinction but is rarely used for emphasis due to accessibility issues. It is best used for indicating special status or adding annotations. Now here I'm going to add a new section and we'll add a title, underlined element. Now I'm going to add a new paragraph and we'll type this is an underline. Now here's in the underline element. As you can can see, it has an opening and a closing tag. Now you can see how the underline word looks like. Don't use the underline element for links without a proper anchor element. Anchor elements are only used for links, but the underline element is different. Reserve the underline for corrections or specific semantic styling. Use CSS for decorative underlines. Superscript element displays text slightly above the baseline, often in a smaller size, used in mathematical equations, footnotes, or chemical formulas. It is best used for scientific notations like exponents. Now over here I'm going to add a new section and give it a title, the superscript element, and I will add a new paragraph and just type the formula. It's the same as the previous formula, so I'm going to type E, then give it the variable M and C. Now I'm going to add the super element. As you can see, it have an opening and a closing tag, and just type 2 between them. Now you can see how the number 2 is slightly above the variable C. Don't use the superscript element for visual styling rather than semantic intent, and don't nest the superscript element within a non-semantic element. Ensure the use of superscript element matches its purpose, not for general layout shifts. Subscript element displays text slightly below the baseline, often in a smaller size, used in chemical formulas or mathematical notations. Now over here I'm going to add a new section and give it a title, subscript element, and I will add a new paragraph. Water is represented as, I give it H, and I'm going to add the superscript, has an opening and a closing tag, and within the element I will type 2 and then O. This is the chemical representation for water, H2O. Don't use superscript to adjust visual positioning instead of semantic use. Only use this element for accurate superscript representation in data or formulas. So these elements were the typography text elements. It's really easy and you will need them in your page for more organized text. We still have more text elements that you might need on your page, such as the bidirectional elements. Bidirectional elements in HTML, such as the bidirectional isolation or bidirectional override. They're used to handle and control text with mixed directionality, like combining left to right languages, for example English, with right to left languages, for example Arabic. Its purpose, these elements ensure text is displayed correctly in multilingual content, preventing alignment or direction errors caused by conflicting text directions. So we have a few use cases for these elements. First, dynamic content, displaying user-generated names or text in mixed languages. Override default flow, adjusting the direction of specific text fragments for proper layout. Now first we have the bidirectional isolation. The bidirectional isolation element isolates a piece of text to prevent it from being affected by surrounded text direction. Its purpose, it ensures proper alignment for user-generated or dynamic content with unknown or mixed text direction. It's useful when embedding multilingual content that could disrupt layout if not isolated. I'm going to add a simple paragraph and type username. This username have two words. One is English and the other is Arabic, for example. Now the Arabic words are written from right to left and English words are written from left to right. So this is the correct order for both of these languages. So I'm going to type between the paragraph element Arabi, which means Arabic, and English. You can see how the output looks like now. The word English is displayed on the right, and then we have the word in Arabic displayed on the left. Now I'm going to add the bidirectional isolation element, and within them I'm going to add the word Arabi and English, and see how it looks. It reversed these words. So for instance, if a person's username starts with an Arabic name first, then for example numbers, if you type it without the bidirectional isolation element, the number will be displayed first, then the name in Arabic, which is incorrect. So now if I add the bidirectional element isolation to the username, it will be displayed properly. So in this example over here, we have the name Noor and a few numbers 1, 2, 3. So I'm going to add a bidirectional isolation element, and you can see how the words are being displayed. Now use the bidirectional element when displaying content like usernames, file names, or dynamic data from unknown languages. If you do not use the bidirectional isolation element for dynamic or mixed direction text, it will lead to layout issues. Assuming bidirectional element automatically sets a direction, well, it doesn't. It simply isolates the text. Now we have the bidirectional override. The bidirectional override element explicitly overrides the natural text direction, forcing the enclosed text to follow a specific direction from left to right or right to left. Its purpose, it overrides default or inherent text direction for stylistic or layout purposes. It helps align multilingual text or correct errors in directional rendering. So for example, I'm going to add a paragraph element and I will type correct this. Now I'm going to add the bidirectional override element. As you can see, it has an opening and a closing tag. I'm just going to type ABC123, and now I will add the direction attribute and I will force the direction of this phrase from right to left. So the text ABC123, it will be rendered from right to left, overriding the default left to right direction. As you can see, it became 321 CBA. So use the bidirectional override only when the default text direction causes alignment or readability problems. Always include the direction attribute left to right or right to left to define the desired direction. If you forgot to include the direction attribute, no effect will happen on the word or phrase. Misusing the bidirectional override for non-directional styling, which is better handled with CSS. Now the direction attribute which we used in the previous example is short for direction. This attribute specifies the text direction of an element's content. It is commonly used to set the reading order of text, particularly for multilingual content, where some languages are read from left to right and others from right to left. Now the direction attribute have both values, left to right, text direction, default for most languages like English, Spanish, and French. So for example, I'm going to add a paragraph and I will type this text is left to right and will add the attribute direction left to right. Now the right to left attribute specifies right to left text direction used for languages like Arabic. Now I'm going to add a new paragraph and I will type in Arabic هذا النص من اليمين إلى اليسار, which means this text is from right to left, and I will add the direction right to left, and this is how the phrase should look like in Arabic. Now we have the attribute auto. It automatically simply detects the text direction based on the content of the element. So here I'm going to add a new paragraph, and we'll add marhaban in Arabic, which means hello, and I will add the attribute direction auto. As you can see, it detected the language Arabic and it is represented correctly from right to left. Now this is useful when the text language is dynamic or unknown in advance. Now where to use these direction attributes? You can use the direction attribute in the HTML root element. You can set the base text direction for the entire document. So here I'm going to go to the root element. We have the HTML language English over here. I'm going to add the direction, for example, right to left. You can see how the entire document has been set from right to left. Now you can see that there are a few lines over here that didn't change its direction, and that's because of the second use of the direction element, which is specific elements. We can apply it to individual elements when only a portion of the text requires a different direction. So any text over here, for example in here from left to right text, we added the direction attribute from left to right, and as you can see, the left to right text direction was from left to right. Okay, now we go to lists and definition elements. We start with the definition list. The definition list element groups a set of terms and their corresponding descriptions in a structural format. It consists of definition term and definition description to define the relationship between terms and their explanations. It is best used for glossaries, listing terms and their meanings, or organizing questions and their answers in a clear, structured way, or in presenting terminology and explanations, providing clarity for users. So for example, over here, I'm going to add the definition list element. As you can see, it has an opening and a closing tag. Now I'm going to add some space over here, and I will add the definition term. So you start with adding the term. So definition term, for example, I will add HTML. The definition term element has an opening and a closing tag. And now I'm going to add the definition description for that term. And as you can see, the definition description also have an opening and a closing tag. And I'm going to type hypertext markup language, which is the definition for HTML. And I will do it again. I will add another term, CSS, for example, and I will add the definition for CSS, for example, cascading style sheets. Okay, I have explained in previous videos about lists. We have ordered and unordered lists, but this definition list is different. It is only used for terms and their definitions. So using the definition list element for bullet lists or non-definition purposes, it is incorrect. Also, stick to the term description pairing format, the definition term, and then we have the definition description. Now the definition term is used to define a term in a definition list, serving as the key or label for the associated description. It is best used as part of the definition list, where it pairs with a definition description element to provide a clear definition or explanation of the term. Like in this example, we have HTML and CSS, both are terms. The definition description is used to provide description, explanation, or values for a term, specifies in the definition term element in a definition list. It is best used in conjunction with definition list and definition term to present clear term definition pairings. For example, we have the definition definitions, hypertext markup language, and the cascading style sheets in this example. Okay, now we have another element, which is the meter element. The meter element represents a scale measurement within a predefined range, like performance metrics, temperature readings, or ratings. It visually displays a value relative to a range, like ratings or measurements. Its purpose ideal for presenting a measurement where the value lies within a specific range. This is commonly used for things like performance scores, battery levels, rating or reviews, and so on. Now, the meter element have multiple attributes. We have the minimum attribute, which specifies the minimum value of the range. The default is 0. This sets the lower bound of the meter. We have the max attribute, specifies the maximum value of the range. The default is 1. This sets the upper bound of the meter. And we have the value. It indicates the current value within the defined range. This is the value being measured or displayed. And the low. It defines the low threshold, indicating the lower range of acceptable values. When the values falls below this, the meter might display a warning or be visually highlighted. High defines the high threshold, indicating the upper range of acceptable values. When the value exceeds this, the meter can be visually altered to show this. And finally, we have optimum. It specifies the ideal or optimum value range for the measurement. This is often displayed within a different visual styling, signaling the best performance or value. Now over here, I'm going to add a label, and for example, I'm going to add a meter for a battery level. And now I'm going to add the meter element. So I'm going to add the first attribute, which is the minimum, and I will set it to 0, then the maximum to 100, the value, for example, I will set it to 75, the low, for example, will be 25, and the high, for example, I will make it 85, and the optimum will be 60. Now in this example, the meter represents a value of 75 out of 100, which the optimal range being between 60 and 85. Always include a descriptive label for accessibility. Use the minimum, maximum, and value to provide meaningful context. Now, using the meter element without specifying a minimum or maximum, it will make it unclear what the range represents. Now, finally, we have the progress element. The progress element represents the progress of a task that has a measurable completion percentage. It's not like the meter element, such as file uploads, downloading process, or loading bars. Its purpose, this element is ideal for indicating the current status of a task with a measurable completion rate. It is typically used for things like file uploads, video loadings, download progress, task completion indicators. Now, as usual, the progress element have attributes as well. It have the value, which specifies the current progress of the task. This is the value that indicates how much of the task has been completed. For example, if a task is 50% done, the value would be set to 50. And then we have the max attribute. It defines the total value or the full scale of the task. The default is 1, but it can be adjusted based on the specific task. For example, 100 for percentage-based progress. Now, over here, I'm going to add another label, but this time we will measure the progress of uploading a file, for example. So in the label, I'm going to type uploading file. Now I'm going to add the progress element. and we'll add an ID for it, file upload, and the attribute value, I will set it to 40, and the maximum will be 100, and I'm going to add 40%. Now in this example, the progress element represents a task that is 40% complete, with the total task value being 100. Now use the progress element alongside textual information for clarity. For example, 60% uploaded and so on. Ensure the value updates dynamically to reflect real progress. Using the progress element for static values instead of dynamic tasks is incorrect. Okay, now we have reached the end of today's video. I hope you find it useful. Thank you all for watching.